We stay in the Peach State now and welcome in another gentleman running for Congress. And like Loudermilk, the big day to vote is Tuesday, and he is the clear choice in the 1st District, Dr. Bob Johnson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm really tickled to be here.
Sarah Palin backing your bid for Congress. You're a doctor, a retired Army Ranger, and a Christian conservative, so it seems like you'd be a perfect candidate for a Palin endorsement.
It seems like it. I think I'm the perfect candidate for South Georgia. You know, this is a really conservative part of the country, and the values that I hold are the values of the people down here. We're strong Christian conservatives. We're also fiscal conservatives, and I think most folks here have a bit of a libertarian bent too.
Well, that's that Palin mode, too. She always says, conservative with a libertarian streak, so I could understand that. Tell us a little bit about your medical background.
Well, I've spent my whole life working in medicine one way or another. I joined the Army back in the 70s as an Army Ranger medic, which meant I went to Ranger school and had to blow up bridges and all the kind of things Rangers do, and as an advanced practice medic. I then became a physician assistant in the Army, and as such was stationed in Europe for a while in infantry and armor units as a medical platoon leader. Then got out and went to medical school and finished up the second half of my 26-year career as an ear, nose, and throat doctor and head and neck cancer surgeon. For the last 5 years, I was in the Army because of my special operations background. I was in charge of a suite of disaster response teams in the Pacific with a particular mandate for chemical and biological warfare interdiction, and sort of a counterterrorism mission as well.
So you've had a boring life so far.
Yeah, that's right. Well, then I went into private practice. I retired and went into solo private practice in Savannah. My wife's a physician as well, and I have my oldest son, went to West Point, and he's now a physician. I have another son who's at West Point right now. I think he's sleeping under a rock in the rain right now and up in New York, and got an 18-year-old daughter and a foster son. So we're pretty busy folk.
Now, with such an impressive resume, a man in the field of medicine, a man endorsed by doctors, pharmacists, dentists, veterinarians, nurses, and physician assistants all over Georgia, what do you think of Obamacare?
Well, it's an unmitigated disaster, Kevin. I started protesting against Obamacare in 2009. I was actually at a Tea Party rally in Savannah with Ralph Reed and a couple of local Tea Party activists where I was the subject matter expert in why Obamacare was awful. I then went up, Michelle Bachmann called for citizen patriots to come to D.C. on kind of a short notice to protest on the Capitol steps in October of 2009, and there were probably 10,000 of us there. I met my current Congressman, Jack Kingston. We went up. He actually brought me to Michelle Bachmann's office where she put me in talk radio in her district to tell people about the evils of Obamacare. The primary problem with Obamacare isn't even about health care. It's the government trying to take control of your belly button. Because once they have your belly button, they've got everything else, right? And it really is about government control of populations. The healthcare business part is an unmitigated disaster. It's an unworkable Rube Goldberg contraption that if you take one piece out, the whole thing collapses. And they've taken about 27 pieces out now by executive order. So it's a collapsing system. It's raised healthcare prices for most of the people I know. And it's really bad for doctors because people can't afford to pay their bills now. It's amazing. In one fell swoop, the President of the United States and his Democratic henchmen in Congress took a healthcare system that was reasonable and turned it into a collapsing nightmare.
And, you have so many people who speak out against Obamacare, but here someone of your background, I mean, this should really make people take notice and say this is a man who knows the ins and outs of the medical community from all aspects, from your family, top to bottom, and here you are telling us what a disaster it is. Now, you also mentioned executive orders. This is something that the current president has liked to go for in many issues and is trying once again. What would you do if elected as far as those types of things? Is this the type of thing you'd speak out about on the floor? Because, we were always brought up that there were branches of government.
Well, exactly. I mean, he's really overstepped his bounds. The last couple of times I've seen him on television, he looks like a weak and beaten down man, actually. And I think he's finally sunk in that he's been over his head since the beginning. I mean, this is someone I wouldn't hire to work the front counter of a candy store. He's never signed the front of a paycheck, never been in charge of anything, and the American people, with the assistance of the liberal media, put him in charge of the greatest enterprise in the history of the world. And he's just losing. And he's, I think his henchmen that he calls a cabinet and the White House staff do a job on prompting him to do this executive order stuff. I don't think he's really creative enough or bright enough to pull any of this stuff off by himself. And I think his organization in these last 2 years, sadly for the American people, is going to collapse. And Congress, the legislative branch, is going to have to step into the gap. And it's far from an optimal situation, but we're really going to need a strong Congress. And I think I'm the kind of guy we need up there. We need some people with a warrior's heart. We need more Trey Gowdies up there. Louis Gomers. People are going to fight for the well-being of the American people, for the constitutional rights of the American people.
And, Doctor, I don't think we have to worry about him heading up a candy store. Michelle would never let him work with candy, maybe a tofu store. Now,
I'd rather have a Snickers bar, but
I don't know. Well, now listen, voters have a clear choice here in Georgia. Your proven record or an opponent who really is a liberal, right?
Well, this is a guy who doesn't know who he is. I'm sure if he was in Connecticut, he'd be a center-left guy. Here he's sort of a center-right guy, but he's really whatever the governor or the lieutenant governor tell him to be. It's well known in the legislature that he doesn't vote until he gets permission from the higher-ups, because he's been grooming his political career. And for 25 years, just climbing up the steps. He's an ambitious person without much of a political soul, from what I can tell. It's one of the reasons I got into the race. He's just would be an awful congressman. He'd be looking out for his own gain, trying to climb the ladder of committee assignments, and not what we need right now, Kevin. We need fighters up there. I mean, we're going to lose our republic here in a few years, a handful of years. If we keep this debt machine going, we'll collapse everything, and we'll end up having some sort of martial law or totalitarian takeover of the population. It should be very scary for people when they look down the road of massive indebtedness, where that leads to.
What are the issues that voters are talking to you about when you're out on the campaign trail? What is Georgia worried about right now?
There are two issues, and it's interesting because we thought it would be jobs and the economy at the top. It's really these two things that people ask about and want to talk about. Number one is Obamacare. Every Republican primary voter I know wants to just get rid of it, and we need to get rid of it. And the second issue is term limits. It's a really on-fire issue down here. I think everybody's figured out that having a professional Congress has been a disaster for the American people. It's my view, Kevin, that when people get up there for 20, 30 years, they're married to the lobbyists. They're no longer wed to the interests and values of their home district. And I think we have people rotating out in 6 or 8 years. Give me a number. I mean, I've signed the term limits pledge, which is 3 2-year terms in the House and 2 in the Senate. That works. Maybe there's something better. I don't know. We need to look at it. But in any case, it should be more like being on the church grounds committee, not a job everybody wants to do for 20 years. You do it for 6 years or so and come home and enrich your community by being someone who's had federal legislative experience. I really think this solves quite a variety of ills.
Yeah, I mean, it's really what the founders wanted, certainly not what we've been seeing with some of these career politicians. Now, you're a physician, but above all, you're a Christian, and you've used your talents in the medical field for much good. You helped those in need following Hurricane Katrina. You've been to Guatemala. How wonderful is that to be able to help so many people with your God-given abilities?
Well, it's a great blessing from God. I never knew as a poor kid growing up in a rural town in the Midwest that I'd be able to do all the things I've done. And when I look back, I realize that, you just praise God for all his blessings and ability to get ahead, and the fact that I'm an American, that we have real social mobility in America, that the American dream is still alive. You can start out as I was the poorest kid in my community. The American Legion used to send groceries to my house at Christmas time. And I'm not the poorest kid in my community anymore, but it's still, it's ironic, as you know, Kevin. Conservatives have the greatest heart for the poor in America, and we've been sold down the river by the mass media. I mean, when I go to Guatemala, 90% of my colleagues have given up their time, paid their own way, are Christian conservatives. And you go into the airport in Guatemala City, there are 8 to 10 primarily Christian mission groups. They each have their powder blue or their orange T-shirt on with their logo. They're either digging wells, or they're building schools, or they're doing health care. And on their own dime, this is not American welfare. This is the goodwill of Christian folk in America. And this is how it should be in our own country. Most good works should come from our own communities.
What is your website, sir?
It's www.bobjohnsonforcongress.com.
All right, easy enough to remember. Governor Palin helped Paul Gosar, a dentist, and Ted Yoho, a veterinarian, get elected. Now it's Dr. Bob Johnson, and we need you because this country is surely bleeding in many ways. Listen, God bless you, and thanks so much. Best on Tuesday and beyond.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. I really enjoyed our interview.
BobJohnsonForCongress.com is the place to go for much more on this campaign. That's BobJohnsonForCongress.com. When Sarah Palin endorsed Johnson and Loudermilk this past week, she took to social media to write about these two men. Palin said of Johnson that he is one doctor we need in the House. Americans are tired of career politicians who make empty promises during campaigns only to get to Washington to advance their own careers. Dr. Bob is in this campaign with a servant's heart. And of Loudermilk, Palin said he has a proven record of conservatism in the Georgia General Assembly, one that I hope he can bring to the weak-kneed in the halls of Congress. Barry will take his strong work ethic, life experiences, and conservative principles to Washington, where he will join the fight to restore our great nation and use the Constitution as his guide. To see any of the governor's posts in their entirety, visit Sarah Palin's Facebook page and follow her on Twitter @SarahPalinUSA.